This piece of wood was made in 1971. It's been outside, through rain, snow, summer heat, and freeze cycles that would destroy most modern furniture. And it looks almost exactly the same as the day it was finished. The guy who built it spent $5 on the finish. $5. And I'm going to show you exactly what he used, and why the woodworking industry basically buried it. But before I do that, I need to ask you something honest. How many projects have you built that didn't last as long as you thought they would? A deck board that started cupping after one winter. A garden bench that looked great in May and looked abandoned by October. An outdoor table you were proud of, that you had to throw away 3 years later. If that's happened to you, it's not because you don't know what you're doing. It's because someone sold you the wrong finish and called it the right one. Here's what nobody talks about. The finishing industry changed dramatically in the 1980s. Not because the new products were better for the wood, but because they were cheaper to manufacture, easier to ship, and faster to apply. And the old methods, the ones that had been working for over a century, got quietly phased out. Not banned, not disproven, just inconvenient. Because you can't sell a $40 can of something if people know a $5 alternative outperforms it over 50 years. There was a craftsman named Earl who worked out of a small shop in rural Vermont for most of his life. No social media, no online store. Just a guy who built things that lasted and sold them to neighbors. A woman I know bought a rocking chair from Earl in 1987. That chair has lived on a covered porch in New England ever since. Not stored inside, not refinished, just sitting there through 37 winters. Last year I sat in it. It was solid. The finish still had depth to it. I asked her what Earl used. She didn't know, but she still had the original receipt. The finish cost him $4.80. What Earl used was a penetrating oil finish, specifically a blend of raw linseed oil and a small amount of mineral spirits, sometimes with a touch of Japan dryer to speed the cure. This isn't a secret in theory. You can find references to it going back to the 1800s. But in practice, almost nobody teaches it anymore because it requires patience. It doesn't dry fast. It doesn't look impressive on a shelf at the hardware store. It just works for decades. The reason it lasts so long is that it doesn't sit on top of the wood like a film finish does. It goes into the wood. It becomes part of the fiber. So when the surface takes a hit, UV, moisture, temperature change, there's nothing sitting on top to crack or peel. The wood itself is protected from the inside out. And when it does eventually need a refresh, you don't strip it. You don't sand it back to bare wood. You just wipe on another coat. That's it. Now, I'll be honest with you. Learning this trick changed how I think about finishing entirely. And it made me realize how many other techniques like this exist that just never made it into the mainstream conversation. Things that used to be common knowledge in any serious woodshop that got replaced not because they stopped working, but because they stopped being profitable to sell. And if you're someone who builds things, whether it's your first project or your 500th, that gap in knowledge is costing you. In wasted materials. In projects that don't turn out the way you pictured them. In weekends spent fixing things that shouldn't have needed fixing. I found something recently that actually addresses this in a way I wasn't expecting. It's a collection of woodworking plans. Over 16,000 of them. And what makes it different isn't just the number. It's that every single plan was physically built and tested before it was published. Measurements verified. Steps that confused people were rewritten. The kind of thing Earl would have had no patience for if it wasn't right. I'll leave the link in the comments. It's not for everyone. But if you've ever started a project from a plan and hit a wall halfway through, it might be exactly what you needed. Take a look if you're curious. Now, back to the finish. Because there's a specific ratio that matters, and most people who try this get it wrong the first time. The mix Earl most likely used, and that I've tested on exterior projects myself, is 3 parts raw linseed oil to 1 part mineral spirits. Some craftsmen add a very small amount of Japan dryer, roughly a teaspoon per quart, to bring the cure time down from days to about 24 hours. Without the dryer, raw linseed oil can stay tacky for a long time, especially in humid conditions. So if you're working in summer or in a damp shop, the dryer makes a real difference. Application is simple, but the process is what makes it work. You warm the oil slightly. Not hot, just warm, and you apply it with a rag in a circular motion, working it into the grain. You let it soak in for about 15 minutes, then wipe off every bit of excess you can see. This part is important. Any finish left sitting on the surface will get sticky and won't cure properly. What you want is what's soaked in, nothing more. You do this 3 times over 3 days, letting each coat fully cure before the next. After the 3rd coat, you're done. That's the whole process. No special tools, no expensive equipment, just oil, mineral, spirits, a rag, and time. One safety note that I have to mention, and I mean this seriously. Rags soaked in linseed oil can spontaneously combust if you bunch them up and leave them. This is not a myth. It happens because the oil generates heat as it cures. When you're done, spread the rags flat outside to dry completely, or submerge them in water in a metal container. Don't throw them in the trash while they're still wet. This is one of those things that gets left out of a lot of tutorials, and it genuinely matters. The wood you apply this to should be clean, dry, and lightly sanded. Around 150 grit is fine. You don't need to go finer than that because the oil penetrates better into a slightly open grain. And if you're working with a dense wood like teak or ipe, wipe the surface down with mineral spirits first to remove any natural oils that might prevent penetration. Earl knew all of this. He learned it from someone who learned it from someone else in a chain of knowledge that went back long before finishing products came in spray cans and plastic containers. That chain got broken somewhere in the last 40 years. Not completely. There are still craftsmen who work this way, but enough that most people starting out today have never heard of it. And that's really what this video is about. Not just a finish, but the idea that some of the most reliable techniques in woodworking are the ones that got quietly left behind. Not because they stopped working, but because they weren't convenient for the people selling you things. The $5 trick works. Earl's chair is still on that porch. And the next time you finish an outdoor project, you have a choice between something that sits on top of the wood and eventually fails, or something that becomes part of it and lasts longer than most of the other things in your life will. Give it a try on a test piece first if you're not sure. See how it looks. See how it feels. Then decide for yourself. If this kind of thing interests you, techniques that actually work, explained the way they should be, hit subscribe. I put out videos like this regularly, and the link for those plans I mentioned is in the comments if you want to check it out. See you in the next one.